Imagine living in constant fear, knowing that your abusive ex-husband is not only capable of violence against you, but has also been exposed as a serial killer. Now add to that the unimaginable horror of your son being taken from you, despite you having full legal custody. This is the real-life nightmare of Lebna, a mother desperately searching for her son after a chilling series of events that have unfolded over the past 3 years. This is her story, one of survival, strength, and a mother's unrelenting determination to find her child. Lebna's life began with hope when she married Karim. He was charming, polite, and seemed like the perfect partner, someone she could build a future with. At first, their life together was filled with promise, and for the initial years of their marriage, things seemed normal. Karim presented himself as a supportive husband, making her feel safe and cared for. However, the cracks in his facade began to show after the birth of their son, Zayn. Becoming a mother was a transformative experience for Lebna. Zayn became her world, the focus of her love and attention. But what should have been a time of joy turned into a nightmare. Karim began to resent the love and care Lebna gave to their child. He grew jealous and angry, unable to accept that Zayn's needs often took precedence over his own. His insecurities surfaced as he demanded constant attention and control over every aspect of their lives. As Karim's jealousy deepened, his behavior became increasingly volatile. He started to lash out, verbally and physically. What began as arguments escalated into terrifying incidents of violence. Karim would berate Lebna, accusing her of neglecting him for their child. When words failed to satisfy his need for dominance, he resorted to physical abuse. He would strangle her until she lost consciousness, only to weep and beg for forgiveness afterward. This cycle of violence and remorse trapped Lebna in a relentless nightmare. Despite his treatment of her, Karim maintained an outward appearance of charm. He used this facade to manipulate those around him, including his own family, who remained unaware of the extent of his cruelty. But inside the privacy of their home, Karim's darker side was fully unleashed. His accusations against Lebna became more sinister. He began accusing her of infidelity without evidence, projecting his insecurities onto her. Meanwhile, Lebna discovered the ultimate betrayal. Karim was recording himself in intimate situations with other women. Even when confronted with proof of his infidelity, Karim turned the blame onto Lebna, further gaslighting her and tightening his grip on her life. Karim's possessiveness extended to controlling the family's finances and mobility. Despite being capable of working, Karim refused to take responsibility for providing for the family. Lebna became the sole breadwinner, working tirelessly to support their household while raising Zayn. She bore the weight of financial burdens while enduring relentless abuse. The imbalance of power left her feeling isolated and trapped, with no safe way to escape. The situation worsened as Karim's anger spiraled further out of control. He began threatening not just Lebna but also her younger siblings. His rage knew no bounds, and Lebna knew she had to leave for her safety and for Zayn's future. Yet, every attempt to escape was met with more violence and manipulation. Karim would apologize and promise to change, but his actions only grew more dangerous. Lebna's once promising marriage had turned into a waking nightmare. She lived in constant fear, navigating the chaos of Karim's violent outbursts while desperately trying to protect her son. As Zayn grew older, Lebna realized that staying meant exposing her child to the same cycle of abuse. She knew she had to find a way out, no matter how difficult, to save herself and her son from Karim's wrath. The turning point in Lebna's life came when she resolved to leave Karim and create a safer future for herself and her son Zayn. But this decision was far from simple. Karim's manipulative tactics and unrelenting abuse made it almost impossible for her to make a clean break. His jealousy and controlling nature intensified when he realized she was determined to leave, and his threats became life-threatening. One evening, Karim asked for something that seemed innocent enough: a chance to spend time alone with Zayn. He claimed he wanted a few hours to bond with his son, promising that he would take him out for dinner and return him safely. After years of enduring Karim's unpredictable behavior, Lebna hesitated but eventually agreed. She wanted to believe that he was capable of being a caring father. Yet, in the back of her mind, she feared this could be another one of Karim's manipulative games. That day marked the last time Lebna saw her son. Karim vanished with Zain, severing all contact with her. Panic set in as hours turned into days, and Lebna realized the full extent of Karim's plan. He filed for divorce and falsely accused her of adultery, a crime punishable by law in Egypt. This legal maneuver not only painted Lebna as a criminal in the eyes of the law, but also stripped her of the ability to safely pursue custody of her child. Karim's ability to manipulate the legal system in Egypt added another layer of danger for Lebna. In a country where domestic violence was not legally recognized, her pleas for help were dismissed. She faced the constant threat of arrest due to the fabricated adultery charges, making it unsafe for her to seek help through official channels. For months, Lebna tried to track down Karim and Zain, but he remained elusive. Karim's threats loomed large, as he often warned that any attempt to confront him would end with her death. He would stalk her, showing up unannounced at places she frequented, forcing her to flee from him repeatedly. On several occasions, Karim's violence escalated to near-fatal levels. Once he cornered her in her own home and attempted to strangle her, only stopping when neighbors intervened. The fear of being killed became an ever-present reality for Lebna. She knew that staying in Egypt meant risking her life. Karim's reach extended far beyond her immediate surroundings, as he also began threatening her younger siblings. His wrath was not confined to her alone. He sought to destroy everything she cared about to maintain control over her. When the weight of Karim's threats became unbearable, Lebna made the heart-wrenching decision to flee Egypt. Disguising herself to evade Karim's watchful eyes, she left behind her family, home, and everything she knew. With no choice but to prioritize her safety, she escaped to the United Kingdom, hoping that distance would offer her a chance to regroup and fight for her son from afar. But the pain of being separated from Zain weighed heavily on her, a wound that grew deeper with every passing day. In the UK, Lebna began the long and grueling process of seeking justice and reuniting with Zain. As a British citizen, she hoped that her case would gain traction in international courts, but the challenges were far greater than she anticipated. Legal battles drained her financially and emotionally, as she spent every penny she earned on attorneys and investigators. Despite having full custody of Zain, the barriers to enforcing that custody across borders were immense. Every day, Lebna lived with the haunting question, where was her son? She reached out to authorities in Egypt, pleading for help, but the lack of cooperation and bureaucratic hurdles left her feeling helpless. Karim's false allegations of adultery further complicated matters, making her case a lower priority in a system that already dismissed the severity of her situation. She sought help from the British Embassy, but their ability to intervene was limited. While navigating legal avenues, Lebna remained vigilant online, hoping for any clue about Zain's whereabouts. She scoured social media for traces of Karim and his family, piecing together fragments of information. Occasionally, she would find posts or videos shared by Karim's relatives, giving her glimpses of Zain. Each image was bittersweet, a fleeting connection to her son who was growing up without her. The torment of separation was compounded by the uncertainty of Zain's living conditions. Karim's mother, Zain's grandmother, had taken custody of him after Karim's arrest. Despite having no legal right to keep him, she refused to let Lebna see or even contact her son. When Lebna tried to reach out, her calls were ignored or blocked. Messages sent to Zain went unanswered, though the read notifications suggested someone was seeing them. In one of her desperate attempts to connect with Zain, Lebna sent him a heartfelt message. "I will never stop looking for you until the day I die. You are my world, my heart, and my everything. I love you more than words can say." But even as she poured her heart out, the silence on the other end was deafening. The pain of not knowing how Zain was growing up consumed her. She wondered if he still remembered her, if he missed her, or if he had been told lies about why she was no longer there. The last memory she had of him was from a joyful day at a shopping center, where he had insisted on buying balloons to give to strangers. That memory of Zayn's kindness and innocence kept her going through the darkest moments. As news of Karim's crimes began to surface, Lebna realized the full extent of his monstrosity. Karim had been arrested for being a serial killer, with evidence of torture chambers and multiple victims found in his apartment. The revelation was horrifying, but it also gave Lebna hope that justice might finally prevail. With Karim imprisoned and facing a death sentence, she believed that her path to reclaiming Zayn would become clearer. However, Karim's arrest only complicated matters further. Before being taken into custody, he had told the police that Lebna was dead, a lie that added another layer of confusion and deceit to an already dire situation. Karim's mother used this misinformation to tighten her grip on Zayn, making it nearly impossible for Lebna to locate him. Determined not to give up, Lebna continued her fight, reaching out to media outlets, support networks, and anyone who might help amplify her story. She believed that with enough exposure, someone would recognize Zayn or provide the crucial lead that would bring her closer to reuniting with her son. For Lebna, giving up was never an option, no matter how insurmountable the odds seemed. With Karim now in prison and facing the weight of justice for His Highness' crimes, Lebna thought the nightmare might finally be nearing its end. But the challenges ahead proved no less daunting. The road to Zayn was still obstructed by layers of legal red tape and the unrelenting hostility of Karim's family. His mother, still in control of Zayn, wielded the child as a weapon against Lebna, refusing all communication and ignoring court orders. Lebna's frustration grew as she faced the reality of international custody battles. Despite having full legal custody as per UK law, enforcing this across Egyptian borders required navigating a maze of bureaucracy. Appeals to the British Embassy, Egyptian authorities, and international organizations brought little progress. Time slipped by, with each passing day widening the gulf between mother and son. Determined not to lose hope, Lebna turned to unconventional methods to find Zayn. She hired private investigators to track Karim's family, pouring her dwindling savings into the effort. Days stretched into weeks as the investigators searched for leads. Occasionally they would uncover small pieces of information, sightings of Zayn at a family gathering, his enrollment in a local school. These fragments of knowledge fueled Lebna's determination, even as they underscored the painful truth that her son was out there, living a life without her. Meanwhile, Karim's trial began to dominate headlines. Details of his crimes shocked the public, painting a picture of a man whose cruelty extended far beyond his abuse of Lebna. Victims' families came forward with harrowing stories of betrayal, torture, and loss. As horrific as these revelations were, they also brought an unintended consequence for Lebna. Her story became entangled with Karim's crimes. Media outlets began to portray her not as a grieving mother, but as a figure of morbid curiosity, someone who had once been married to a monster. This distorted narrative made it harder for her to garner the sympathy and support she desperately needed. People speculated about her role in Karim's life, some even questioning how she could have been unaware of his actions. The judgment weighed heavily on her, adding to her already immense emotional burden. Through it all, Lebna held on to one unwavering truth: her love for Zayn. She wrote letters to him every day, even if they would never reach him. She poured her heart into these messages, describing the life she dreamed of sharing with him and the adventures they would have once reunited. These letters became her solace, a way to stay connected to her son despite the miles and barriers between them. As the legal battle dragged on, Lebna also began to rebuild her life in the UK. She took on multiple jobs to fund her search for Zayn, juggling long hours with court appearances and meetings with advocacy groups. She found strength in the support of friends and strangers who rallied around her cause, offering donations, legal advice, and emotional encouragement. Slowly but surely, a glimmer of hope began to emerge. One day, a breakthrough came. An investigator discovered that Zayn's school records had been falsified, an act that could expose Karim's mother's illegal custody. This revelation opened a new avenue for Lebna to pursue her case, giving her the leverage she needed to challenge the family's hold over Zayn. It was a small victory, but one that reignited her determination to bring her son home. Armed with new evidence, Lebna launched an aggressive legal campaign to reclaim Zayn. Her team of lawyers presented a compelling case, demonstrating the unlawful actions of Karim's mother and highlighting the psychological harm being done to her son by keeping him away from his mother. The court proceedings were grueling, but for the first time it felt like progress was being made. The courtroom became a battleground where Lebna faced not only Karim's mother but also the cultural and systemic biases that plagued her from the start. Karim's family painted her as an unfit mother, leveraging her absence from Zayn's life as proof of neglect. They argued that Zayn was better off in Egypt, surrounded by his extended family. But Lebna's legal team countered with undeniable evidence of Karim's crimes and the danger his family posed to Zayn. Witnesses testified about the abuse Lebna had endured and the lengths she had gone to protect her son. The falsified school records became a pivotal piece of evidence, exposing the lies Karim's mother had built her case on. Slowly, the tide began to turn in Lebna's favor. Outside the courtroom, Lebna continued to fight for her son in every way she could. She reached out to media outlets that had once sensationalized her story, urging them to report the truth about her struggle. She connected with advocacy groups that specialized in international custody cases, gaining allies who amplified her voice on a global scale. Her story began to resonate with others who had faced similar battles, creating a network of support that gave her the strength to keep going. The final breakthrough came when the court ruled in Lebna's favor, granting her full custody of Zayn and ordering his immediate return to the UK. The decision marked the end of a long and harrowing chapter in her life, but it was only the beginning of the journey to rebuild the bond with her son. The reunion was bittersweet. When Lebna finally saw Zayn again, he was no longer the small, innocent child she remembered. He had grown, his face etched with confusion and a hint of fear. Years of separation and the lies fed to him by Karim's family had left their mark. But as Lebna knelt down to embrace him, tears streaming down her face, she made a silent vow to heal the wounds of the past and give him the love and security he deserved. Rebuilding their relationship was not easy. Zayn struggled to adjust to his new life, grappling with the conflicting emotions of leaving behind the only family he had known and rediscovering the mother who had fought so fiercely for him. But with time, patience, and love, they began to find their way back to each other. For Lebna, the journey was a testament to the power of a mother's love. Despite the darkness and despair, she had never stopped fighting for her son. And though the scars of their ordeal would never fully fade, they were a reminder of the strength and resilience that had carried them through. Lebna and Zayn's story became a symbol of hope for others facing impossible odds, proving that even in the face of unimaginable hardship, love could triumph.